Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Society of Schenectady, New York. I am serving as your worship associate today. My name is Stephanie Maslenka. My pronouns are she, they. I am an artist. Aren't we all artists? Picasso said, all children are artists. The problem is how to remain an artist when we grow up. So at least for today, my friends, we are all artists.
Good morning. I'm H.B. Stedham, any pronouns. I'm the Director of Lifespan Religious Education here at UUSS, and I am an artist, as scary as that is to say out loud. For worship today, we're going to be focusing on a program that was offered this summer here at UUSS, The Artist's Way. A class designed to reignite the spark of creativity within each of us. The Artist's Way invites us to deepen our connections, explore our truest selves, and bring wonder back to our daily lives. As Snow Studham, also an artist and participant in the Artist's Way, kindles our chalice this morning. Let us delight in these words from the Reverend Tracy Johnson. Light of our creative spirits, light of our wise souls, light of our wandering and curious minds, light of love for this place, this people, this work. Illuminate our hearts and the spaces between them in this sacred time of unfolding. Blessed be. It seems like every generation has its own notion of before and after. Some of these landmark events are serious. My grandfather experienced a time before World War II, before he served our country in France, and a time after when he returned home and contributed my father to the baby boom. Some are more lighthearted. My mom experienced a time before Elvis Presley showed up on the Ed Sullivan Show, a head-to-toe video of him gyrating his hips, causing mass hysteria. And a time after when Elvis, well, again showed up on the Ed Sullivan Show, but this time only shot from the waist up so no one could see him gyrating his hips again, which he did. And of course, we've all experienced a time before COVID when almost no one wore masks and pandemics were reserved for movies, and to this time after COVID when it's not unusual at all to see masks and ubiquitous use of hand sanitizer even 4 years after the devastating disease was at its peak. For me, though, my most personal and significant times of before and after revolved around my diagnosis with kidney cancer and the partial nephrectomy I received shortly after. Before I was diagnosed with renal cell carcinoma in October of 2022, I was a whirlwind of creativity. I edited books for an independent publisher, working with minor celebrities and on New York Times best-selling memoirs and novels. I acted professionally in dinner theater and scored a role in an award-winning independent film. And I wrote a lot, like a lot. I won awards for my creative nonfiction, had essays selected to run on national platforms, and completed 4 novels and had a literary agent trying to sell my work to what we call one of the big 5 publishers. I even started working as a literary agent myself, where I selected a book for representation that went on to sell for almost 6 figures at auction. If a stroke of creativity is called a spark, I was dancing in a blazing bonfire and loving it. In the midst of all this, my family and I moved to Okinawa, Japan for my husband's teaching job. It wasn't the first time we lived overseas. I'll tell you about our 4 years in Italy another time. So the adjustment wasn't as dramatic as you might expect. We knew to get our favorite American groceries on the Air Force Base and to get cool local art in the tiniest little stores off base, what we called on the economy, and to head to the ER at the Navy hospital when we had any immediate medical difficulties, because the clinics on base were always booked weeks in advance. And when it comes to off base, the language barrier was so significant. And to imagine all that in medical jargon, it was too much. So when my lower back seized up, That's where my husband took me, to the ER at the Navy hospital. I figured they'd give me some muscle relaxers and send me home, and that sounded great to me. Imagine my surprise when the medical team did blood work and x rays and an abdominal CT scan. They were leaving no stone unturned, and really thank goodness for that, because otherwise my cancer would have continued to grow unchecked, undiscovered. I did not get muscle relaxers that day. I got a referral to a urologist, a Japanese urologist, because you see, the clinics at the American Naval Hospital aren't just booked far in advance, there are also fewer of them, and the services they offer are limited. There were no American urologic oncologists on staff. I got an appointment with a Japanese specialist quickly. And first, the differences between the American medical system and the Japanese medical system were fascinating to me. I often found them so strange as to be hilarious. I could tell you about the multiple times I waited my turn to see my doctor. It was typically 8 hours or more of a wait. Now, I wasn't upset. I was interested in this little peek I had into socialized medicine. Or I could tell you about the time I was told I absolutely could not get a second opinion because it would offend my original doctor. Yeah, a little bit different from America, right? Yeah. My favorite story, possibly, and also the most embarrassing, was when I was checking in and the nurse handed me a thermometer and I put it right in my mouth. And the nurse immediately freaked out and grabbed it out of my mouth as soon as I can because apparently in Japan you put the thermometers under your arms. And since it's under your arms, there's no need to sterilize between patients. And let me just tell you, you guys, using hand sanitizer as a mouth rinse is not recommended. I know this now, but I didn't then. Look, it was a good hospital, and I had a great medical team. I often had access to an interpreter, and I could tell everyone really, really cared and truly wanted me to get better. But after my partial nephrectomy, I spent 12 days in the hospital. 12 days. A friend of mine here in the States who had the exact same procedure was out in 3. And after day 1, or maybe 2, maybe in the Japanese hospital, I no longer felt fascinated with the cultural differences that had entertained me previously. Nothing was hilarious anymore. And I really want to emphasize it's not that I didn't have quality care. It's the culture was so different that it often it was difficult for me to feel safe. So I spent the first 48 hours in a shared ICU where beepings from other monitors and painkillers that were administered to me without my permission. I mean, let's face it, maybe they asked. I don't know. I didn't really understand what was going on, but I was left confused and overstimulated. The doctor wouldn't give me an expected release date because in the Japanese culture, if that date was wrong, then that was shameful to him. And the Japanese culture, shame is to be avoided at all costs. I didn't speak the language. I mean, I learned some words. Itai means pain. So I couldn't understand the nurses who multiple times a day were monitoring my progress and talking to me. I wasn't allowed any visitors. The Japanese were and are very, very cautious about COVID exposure. And I endured a second procedure where the doctor inserted a stent from my bladder into my kidney without anesthetic of any kind. I was fully awake and sensible, and my brain and body disconnected from each other for about an hour. I was, in a word, I was traumatized. Well, it's been more than a year and a half now. I did eventually make it home to my loving family, and I currently have no evidence of cancer in my body. Yeah, right? So I feel like it's safe to say I am solidly in the time of after cancer, after surgery, after the Japanese hospital. But since that trauma, the creative urge has by and large left me. I've written no new essays, completed no additional novels. I've been afraid to act, to imagine, to spark, as it were, to plug back into that fiery creative life I had built for myself. And then I remembered The Artist's Way. This book by Julia Cameron bills itself as a spiritual path to higher creativity. And I thought, if I'm blocked creatively, are there others in our congregation who might be feeling the same? I started asking around, and sure enough, I found at least a half a dozen folks who also wanted to return to a more creative life. I pitched the class to the adult faith development team, and I was met with enthusiasm. I was met with even further enthusiasm when a full 15 folks signed up for the class. That's the total number of spots we offered. And I'm proud to say that a solid group of 12 of those 15 have really stuck with it. So, what is the artist's way? I'm glad you asked. It's a book and an exercise and a way of living. It's a program predicated on what Julia Cameron calls basic principles. Ideas like creativity is the natural order of life, that a creative force dwells within each and every one of us, and that refusing to be creative is our self-will and is actually counter to our true nature as creative beings. That we are the ones who block ourselves from thinking and acting creatively, and that we can free ourselves from that block. And the artist way works to help us do that in 3 different ways. First, we've got morning pages. We're supposed to get up early every morning and write 3 pages, longhand, stream of consciousness style. Whatever flits through our heads during that time, we're supposed to write it down. This component is designed to help us get out our anxious thoughts, help us uncover some things that might be blocking our creativity, and get us started listening to that creative ebb and flow within us with no judgment. Cameron calls the morning pages the primary tool of creative recovery, and Sarah Meixner is going to be telling you more about morning pages. Second, we read a chapter each week that helps us think deeply about our passions, our mindsets, our connections. It helps us look at where we've been, examine where we are, and dream about where we'd like to go. The chapters offer us tasks to help accomplish this, from making collages to selecting mantras to just listing our wildest goals. And the tasks are designed to push us into diving deeper into our true creative natures. Dawn Porter is here to tell you more about our tasks. And lastly, there are the artist date. Once a week for a block of time, we are to plan a play date for ourselves, just us, to help fill our creative wells. Artist dates can be as complex as taking a train to the city and attending a book launch. I did that one. Or taking a stroll along a creek. Snow Sedum, who lit our chalice, has done that multiple times. Whatever fills your soul and delights your senses and makes you feel connected can be an artist date. You just have to say, this is an artist date. And Melissa McKinnon will share her perspective on that. We're also going to have a reflection from Lois Porter, who will show us the fruition of all of these things combined. I've been doing all of this too. Well, most of it, most of the time. I'm not as faithful as Lois or Sarah, but I can truly feel a difference from where I was before. I really can. I mean, I wrote this, right? And I'm up here in front of you delivering it, and I haven't passed out yet. I may not be acting in a major motion picture right now, and I may not be signing any copies of my newest best-selling novel yet, but I'm here, and I'm working on my creative recovery. It's the dawn of a new after for me. And I hope this dawn burns brighter than 1,000 suns.
Good morning. My name is Sarah Meixner. You can use she, they pronouns. And I am an artist. Just saying that I am an artist is not something I could do at the beginning of this journey. And saying it now, especially here in front of so many people at once, is so meaningful for me that sometimes it moves me to tears. For so long, really for almost all of my adult life, I have defined myself and identified myself and who I am by what I was doing for a living, by my job. And in doing so, I have denied a core part of who I am. I've used my work whatever it was at the time as the excuse for why I could not be an artist or call myself one. Years ago, when I was still working as a paralegal, I actually placed a personal ad long before I met Dan. And I described myself as an artist trapped in a pinstripe suit. And then for the 20 years that I've been working as a public school teacher has been the identity that I've tried to live into, while also saying that I like to be creative. I'd love to make art, but I'm so tired and I'm so busy and I'm so stressed. And it would be so selfish for me to take time to do my own thing when I have so many things and so many people and so many chores and things to take care of. It's just wildly self-indulgent. So, as a little background, and something that not everyone probably knows about me, is that I actually went to college with an art honors scholarship. And I was planning to be a painter or a sculptor, but somewhere along the way, I lost my resolve and my confidence, and I let fear take hold. Fear of failure, maybe fear of success, fear of loneliness. And I changed schools and majors and ended up with a theater degree and a concentration in acting, another creative career that I did not pursue. And I graduated and then logically ended up working at a law firm, ultimately becoming a paralegal. And 10 years later, I went back to school, not to finish my art major or do anything else with theater, but to get a teaching degree, which is what I've been doing ever since. But I've always felt a pull to continue expressing my creativity throughout my adult life. And this has taken many forms. I've done pottery, I've done photography, I've done paper crafting, candle making, bookbinding. For a while, I even had the audacity, or I've never had the audacity to call myself an artist, even when I had a small candle business for a while. And I've never really stuck with anything. I've been a really good beginner at a lot of things, and I have enough art supplies to stock my own store, but I can go back to all that when I retire, I kept telling myself. There's no time to fully engage in any of that now. So, what does all of this have to do with the morning pages? Well, I can say with certainty that without the morning pages, I would not be able to stand here today and call myself an artist. Julia Cameron says, as HB told us, that the morning pages are one of the basic tools in the process of creative recovery. She says, in order to retrieve your creativity, you need to find it. And the way to find it is through the morning pages. Wake up a half hour early every day. Not my thing. And write for 30 minutes. Not my thing. 3 pages. Longhand. Also not my thing. Stream of consciousness, that I can do. A brain dump. And if there's nothing to say, she says, just write, I have nothing to say, and keep on doing that until something comes up. So there is no wrong way to do morning pages, but they are non-negotiable. So honestly, the idea of waking up earlier so that I could write was way less than appealing to me. And for me, during the school year, that means I have to wake up at like 5. And I was very, very resistant at first. I am not a morning person. I am not a journaler. I'm a talker, which is how I process and sort stuff out, much to the chagrin of people who are stuck listening to me. I am not good at writing. I don't like writing longhand. I like writing with a computer because I make too many mistakes and it's going to be messy. I have arthritis. I don't have good handwriting. I just don't have that kind of time. What if I write something bad and somebody else sees it? What if I die and someone finds my journals and then they learn all of my secrets? I don't have anything important to say that is worth writing down. And I want to be an artist. Why would I do writing every day? Shouldn't I be doing an art journal or something like that instead? Etc., etc., etc. I had a lot of excuses. So the first week, I did the pages twice. I hated getting up early, and I didn't have a nice journal to use yet. So I had to write on just like random bits of paper. And I was literally, and I am now, judging and criticizing the quality of what I was writing in or on, and then using that as an excuse not to write, even though no one else will ever see it. And I didn't believe that the pages would really help me all that much anyway. My inner critic was very loud. And Julia Cameron suggests that we name our inner critics. So mine is named Phyllis. And Phyllis had a lot of reasons why my writing would not be useful, and Phyllis has derailed my creativity attempts for a long time. Well, I have since told Phyllis who's boss, and as of today, I have done 61 entries in my journal pages, over 180 pages of long handwriting, and my handwriting is actually kind of nice. I filled an entire journal. I did eventually get a really pretty one. And then I started in a second one, which is also very pretty. And there were a few that I've missed since the first week, but I've remained overall committed to the practice since week 2. And now my morning pages are like a sort of morning meditation. And I've also realized that I really love being up first in the house and having some time in the quiet to myself to meditate on the page and to get myself ready for the day ahead. And even if we think we have nothing to write, Cameron tells us, do the pages. So when nothing pops into my mind, I will take note of the weather, the temperature, the humidity. There's a lot of pages talking about humidity from this summer. The birds that I'm hearing, or the squirrels that are playing in the trees in my backyard. And sometimes I'll just start with the I have nothing to write and repeat it until something wells up. Almost every time something does. Some days the pages read like a bouncing ball from one thought to the next with no logical flow. And some days my mind is moving so fast right when I start that my hands can't keep up. And then on other days, often on days when I thought my mind was a blank, I've started with my daily weather report or I have nothing to write, and then I end up making a huge breakthrough. Cameron says, each day's morning pages take a swipe at the blur you have kept between you and your real self. And thanks to the morning pages, we learn what we want and ultimately become willing to make the changes needed to get it. I want to be an artist. So now I am making art. I am unapologetically taking the time I need to lean into this core part of my identity that is no longer willing to be dormant because of my work in the morning pages. I'm not waiting until I retire to do what really makes me happy. I'm doing it now. My morning pages are keeping me accountable to myself. Putting my thoughts into written words on a page makes them real, and I can't hide from them anymore. I like to say, if you can name it, you can tame it. And getting my fears and creative blocks out of my head makes them more manageable, less scary, and easier to overcome. Through the pages, I've realized that I can no longer keep my artist self in shadows. On June 9th, when we started, I was still, as I wrote, a tired, beaten down, and demoralized public school teacher. I was using that as an excuse for why I could never muster the energy to live into being the creative person that I know I am. And if anyone would ask me over the past several years, how's work? I would verbal process all over them how tired and how stressed and how miserable I was in my job. And this was even before COVID. The morning pages have given me a space to process in conversation with myself, essentially, how I no longer want that to be who I am and what I give to the world. Now I am an artist who works a day job as a teacher to support my massive art supply habit and my family while I build up a body of work and a plan for how to transition into being a full-time working artist when I retire. Another quote from Cameron is that over any considerable period of time, The morning pages perform spiritual chiropractic. They realign our values, and if we are to the left or to the right of our personal truth, the pages will point out the need for a course adjustment. I have adjusted my course over these past 10 weeks, and I am not the same person that I was when I started. I feel different when I move through the world. I feel more authentic, more present, and more happy with who I am and what I am doing. I am an artist, and I am so grateful to have had the chance to go on this journey with these amazing people. And I want to close with a final quote from Julia Cameron. For all creative beings, the morning pages are a lifeline, the trail we explore, and the trail home to ourselves. May you all find your way home. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Don Porter, he, him pronouns. I am a musician. The 12-week Artist's Way program laid out in the book is described in 12 chapters. Each chapter offers some insights and experiences to think about. Each chapter also offers a list of tasks to do, recognizing that each task might be helpful for some people, but not for everyone. The tasks often involve listing things, 20 things you enjoy doing, for example. They often suggest that you recall your childhood, list 5 childhood accomplishments. Some tasks suggest clarifying a question you have. Then, in the next day's morning pages, see if an answer has appeared. That one led me to wonder what block I needed to clear. Much of the language in the book is directed to clearing artists' blocks. I tended to think of this as writer's blocks. But then in my morning pages one day, I observed that I've been neglecting piano playing, and I identified that as a block. Since then, I've changed that behavior, and I'm now spending time with my piano most days. Another task asked us to think about habits that don't help. Lois had just read an article about health effects of alcohol, all negative. So I thought about my habit of having a nightcap every night around 9 p.m. I realized that that habit was not helping me, so I stopped it. The tasks usually seem unrelated to anything useful, but like making lists of childhood accomplishments. But then I notice that I've made some helpful changes in my day-to-day life as a result. There is a subtle wisdom I'm gathering as a result of participating in the course. Sharing our experiences at our weekly meetings helps with insights and encouragement. At the age of 81, I need all the wisdom I can muster to allocate my energy honoring my real priorities. The Artist's Way course is definitely helping me do that.
So I wanted to share some of my experiences with the artist's date part of this writing program. So as HB explained, the artist dates are required weekly time alone play dates. And I would have to say that this was the hardest and maybe the most rewarding part of the course for me. I am a writer by nature. I tend to process by writing. I came into class telling people that I was a very mission-driven person and very busy. I could commit to daily morning pages. That made sense, but I let everyone know I probably would not have time for artist dates, for goddess sakes. It was summertime, after all. I think of summer as the high holy harvest days. These are long days where we plant, we harvest, we preserve, we teach on our farms in Schenectady. These artist dates, especially doing them alone, seemed less valuable, even a little bit selfish to my mission-driven self. So fast forward 3 weeks into this 12-week class, and I found myself with a health issue, which I'm dealing with and I'm fine, but it meant suddenly stepping back from aspects of my work, which I loved, like being outside in the summer. And then, of course, when I shared my current health situation with my course mates here, one of them quipped, "Well, now you have time for your artist dates." So then I learned the real challenge for me was being alone doing something I loved. The being alone part was the scariest, weirdest, most questionable. What did I actually want to do? Who am I when I'm not doing my so called work? Would the world keep turning if I took 2 hours once a week for my own pleasure? But I decided it was once a week, and I figured that I could commit to that. And so each person's journey in committing to the artist dates is different. And I think it's the regular practice. It's taking yourself somewhere you enjoy weekly that changes you. It's not even the specific thing that you do. My artist dates have been, I think there was a picture up there, times alone outside. That's what I crave and derive pleasure from this time of year. It is summer here after all. And it is the artistry of the multitudinous array of plant and animal life that we are alive to here and now that fills me. It is the beauty of purple lupins and white boneset blooming. It's the yellow goldenrods and the dizzying array of bees that can visit a single plant. My artist dates have taken me swimming in a nearby lake at a state park and into the Mohawk River. I even went back to bicycling, and I've been bicycling along the Mohawk Hudson River Bike Trail. It's been interesting in how being alone doing something I love has been extraordinarily healing in so many ways. Artist dates have opened me to both enjoy and look forward to my little mini bucket lists of mostly simple, mostly local weekly pleasures. I'm still looking forward to visiting some small art museums, antique stores, farmers markets. And I think at the end, for me, what I'm always looking out for is what builds resilience. And I think, like we've talked about in different ways here, attending to and caring for our creative selves is resilience building. And in the end, I think the hardest lesson for me, and I'm still working on it, is who I am and how I am in the world matters much more than what I do. Thank you.
My name is Lois Porter. I use she, her pronouns, and I am an artist. In the chapter for week number 7, Julia Cameron focuses on perfectionism, among other things. She says, perfectionism is a refusal to let yourself move ahead. It's a loop, an obsessive, debilitating, closed system that is stuck in the details and loses sight of the whole. Instead of enjoying the process, the perfectionist is constantly grading the results. That's me, at least in regard to certain things. For the perfectionist, there's always room for improvement. Cameron asks the question, what would I do if I didn't have to do it perfectly? Her answer is, a great deal more than I am currently doing. She goes on to say, most of us are practiced at taking ourselves out of risk. We're skilled speculators on the probable pain of self-exposure. This resonates with me too. How about the rest of you? Do you avoid the awful feeling of being humiliated if you're not sure whether whatever you do publicly will turn out well? Let's see a show of hands. How many people? Oh, good. I have lots of company here. Thank you. Cameron goes on to say that very often a risk is worth taking simply for the sake of it. She states there is something enlivening about expanding our self-definition about who we are, and a risk does exactly that. She asked the participants to complete the sentence, "If I didn't have to do it perfectly, I would try." And my answer is playing the harmonica in public. Yes, that's it. Now, I'm an extrovert, but playing harp in public is something that I have been terrified to do. I have no trouble speaking before a group. I'm comfortable playing drums in company and obviously dancing as well. I'm even happy doing tarot readings in public. So why is it that I feel so vulnerable about harmonica playing? Well, the instrument itself is often ridiculed, right? It's not, somehow it's not considered totally valid. It's not like a clarinet or a piano or anything. And on top of that, I know that I'm merely an advanced beginner on the harp. What does that mean, advanced beginner? It means that most of the time I can play pure notes. I hope not. I may have to start and stop and start again, but I am going to do it, and you are going to be treated to this just because I signed up for this course. I hope you recognize this. It's Blue Boat Home in the key of E.
Love and creativity to you all. Have a great week.